Good morning and welcome. Thank you, all of you, for joining us this morning on a glorious spring day here in Johannesburg as we unpack some of the myths and realities of the hybrid work future and the technologies that underpin it. My name is Andrew King. I head up voice for Vox Technologies, and with me on the Vox sound stage today is head of product for all things PBX and telephony, Natalie van der Merwe.
Hi.
If you don't know Natalie by now and haven't engaged with her around advice on PBX and telephony, you will know her by the end of today's webinar. And then our guest speaker today, Arthur Goldstuck, needs no introduction. He is the co-founder, or is the founder rather, and the CEO of Worldwide Works. He is the editor-in-chief of Gadget magazine and prolific author of over 19 titles, 19 books, and today, probably most importantly, he's all ours for the next hour. So we only have an hour today together, folks. We've got a lot to cover, so I think we're just going to jump straight in. Arthur, over to you.
Thank you, Andrew. Good morning, everyone. And to start, I'd just like to share a cup of coffee with all of you to get those brain cells buzzing. First, a brief history of how the future was seen in the past. Back in 1900, this was the way the school of the future was envisaged. And what you're seeing there is a vision of digitalization of textbooks. The only thing they got wrong was that they imagined you could feed the textbooks into people's brains. It's close via your smartphone, via your computers, into your brains. And in the next decade, we probably will have brain-computer interfaces that will make this a reality. Slightly different equipment in use, though. And then this was how they saw streaming entertainment back in 1900. The idea that you could sit in a room remotely from where someone was performing and enjoy that performance. The only thing they got wrong there was how we dress when we watch streaming entertainment, if we dress at all, of course. So as you can see, in the past, it wasn't too difficult to envisage the future. Let's fast forward a little to the 1930s. This was how socialization was perceived. People would be busy on their smartphones. So even back then, the idea of having this screen in front of you through which you spoke to people remotely and were very rude in a social context, being on your phone when you should be engaged with somebody else, was a reality that was predicted and foreseen. Again, the only thing they got wrong was those very funny speaking tubes. And almost all past visions of future communication had a speaking tube. Today, speaking and the mechanism for it disappears into the technology, and you'll be hearing a lot more about that. The irony of seeing the future from the past is that the closer we get to the present, the more inaccurate it becomes. Back at the beginning of 2020, before the pandemic, this was how the office of the future was envisaged. You'd sit in your little kiosk with a laptop, but you'd be working through virtual reality. This is the vision that Mark Zuckerberg would like us all to share. He's starting to sell people on the idea of a metaverse in which you communicate with people in a virtual environment. But as you know, and as you can tell from this image, that's not very practical. But then came the pandemic, and this is how the office of the future suddenly panned out. And for quite a while, many of us were working in this fashion. It was called remote working, working from home, and the like. But as remote working evolved into hybrid working, we started finding that our pajamas were wearing out, or we were able to start shopping online for clothes. And this is what the hybrid future began to look like. Unless, of course, you were caught on the wrong side of the digital divide. I'm going to show you a few graphs of Google Trends that give a sense of what South Africans' biggest concerns have been over the past year and a half or so, from the beginning of 2020. And it gives a fantastic sense of where people's focus is, what their concerns are, and what is engaging their minds most heavily. So this shows the contrast between searching for Netflix as a search term, searching on Zoom, and searching on Teams. So Netflix, of course, is the proxy for online entertainment. And you can see that massive spike in March 2020 as we went into lockdown. And that spike was matched by the spike in searches on Zoom, which was the proxy for video communications and pretty much focusing on personal communication. And along with that came a spike, a much smaller spike in searches on Teams, which was the proxy for work-related communications. And then a fascinating thing happened. As we came out of heavy lockdown, searches on Zoom subsided while searches on Teams remained as strong. And eventually, when we came out of level 3 lockdown, we saw Teams overtaking Zoom in terms of searches. And that was really an indication that the quest for business-related communication was now overtaking the quest for personal home-based education. And that was the true beginning of the hybrid future that we're talking about. Teams eventually overtook Zoom consistently, except at times when we went back into hard lockdowns and when we went into the Christmas holiday season. But now look what happens when you bring education into the mix and you compare education with entertainment and work specifically. And you find that right at the beginning of last year, before the pandemic, the quest for education information exceeded the quest for entertainment. But then the first lockdown began, and suddenly entertainment dramatically outpaced education. And education never really caught up. The only time it came close again was at the beginning of the school year this year. But generally speaking, you can see that when people are studying from home, remote classrooms and the like, they are also mixing that seriously with entertainment from home. And there are brief moments when the quest for education falls back to almost the same level as the quest for business communication. But you can see it's a major concern of South Africans. Entertainment still dominates, though. But there's one other factor, one other topic that truly concentrates the minds of South Africans. And when you overlay that, you start seeing the real crisis that faces this country. And that is the quest for jobs. If you could hear the sirens in the background, you might have thought that I was talking about crime, but jobs are the real issue for most South Africans. And until lockdown began, it far exceeded the quest for entertainment. With that initial lockdown, when you couldn't go to work, jobs for the first time fell below entertainment as a concern of South Africans. And then again, when we hit the holiday season last year, jobs again fell below entertainment. But immediately following the holiday season, it overtook entertainment again and has never fallen behind it. So we have to be aware of the reality of many South Africans. There's the work environment, but there's also the employment environment, and those are two different factors. And just to highlight the importance of that issue in South Africa, this is a survey done by Ipsos on what are the biggest concerns of individuals in each country in the world. And South Africa came third in terms of the highest ranked concern, and that concern was jobs. And you can see that reflected in Google Trends. So the trends I've just been showing you are fairly accurate as an indicator of South African concerns. So to give you a context for that and where we're going in that regard, and whether the jobs environment is going to improve, we looked at a graph produced by the International Data Corporation on the shape of the pandemic from a business point of view. It starts off at the beginning with the need for business continuity. And that's when everyone suddenly was sent home and every business was scrambling to get people set up to be able to continue working and to keep the lights on, basically. Once we entered the recession that was brought on by the pandemic, we then saw that the real emphasis was on resilience. So from continuity to resilience. And then, of course, from there, we move up to recovery. But the most fascinating aspect of how they saw the recovery was that it would be driven by digital revenue. In other words, the digital landscape is going to be a critical element of the recovery as we come out of the pandemic. And we're already seeing that. We're already seeing how important the focus is on digital transformation in the business world. So in that context, let's look at the new shape of the office. First, a study we did in the middle of 2020, 3 months into the first lockdown, called Remote Working in South Africa 2020. And what we were trying to understand there was how long this was going to last, what would happen when we come out of it, but also what makes it work, what makes for an effective remote office. And we found that there were 4 factors that dominated. We refer to these as the diamonds of remote working because it has 4 edges to it. The single most important was entirely about how effective the business was at delegating tasks to people working from home. But very close behind that was the support from the company of whatever people needed for working from home. So management, in its traditional sense, critical, but support of how you work from home, also critical. And then allowing time with children came up far higher than we expected. And what that indicated was the importance of work-life balance in this remote working future. And then along with that came good connectivity in the home environment. That connectivity, in fact, became the glue of this remote working future that we had entered. But the combination of those 4 workers, we summed up, of those 4 factors, we summed up as the happy home, happy worker. And that means that the home has to be part of the hybrid office of the future. The two cannot be separated anymore. The stakes for businesses that don't get this, that don't introduce these 4 factors in combination, are exceptionally high because 91% of employees say that technology now influences their decision to work in a particular job environment. 41% are considering changing their employer because of the technology environment that is being foisted on them or not being provided to them. 90% are saying that they would prefer to work from a location of their choice. It's massive. And then 63% of our employees think that working remotely boosts productivity. Now that last one tallies very strongly with one of our findings from the remote working study from last year, which was that of companies that were digitally transformed, more than 60% said that they had increased productivity. Companies that were not digitally transformed, only 29% said that they had increased productivity. And that dovetails neatly with the Frost & Sullivan survey that says 63% of employees also think that remote working boosted their productivity. So there's a very strong correlation between digital transformation, remote working, and productivity. The benefits clearly are massive if you get it right, of course. So we then asked, once it is all over, will you allow employees to work remotely? And 61% said no. We thought that was very high, but that's also because a high proportion hadn't seen the full benefits. 38% said a definite yes, they would allow staff to work remotely. Now, bear in mind that 38% number, it's going to come up again shortly. What all of this represents is that as organizations embrace the digital way of work, they realize that anything is possible online unless it requires manual intervention. An event can involve 10 people or 10,000 people. This event, I believe, is somewhere between 500 and 1,000 people attending. We wouldn't have been able to do that in a physical space, or at least not without massive preparation for the event. But it was possible to do the same thing 2 years ago before the pandemic. The technology was there, the functionality was available. We just didn't have the mindset, but also we didn't feel the change in our lives. It was something theoretical. Now that change has become palpable. And this is why we call it a digital awakening rather than merely a digital transformation. The thing to always bear in mind, though, the more we awaken digitally, the more a gap opens up between those who are digital and those who are not. I'm going to show you how the cloud revolution has played out in the real world in three fairly dramatic graphs that show the performance of the three biggest cloud providers in the world. And this is the share prices of these three companies. Firstly, Amazon.com, which, as you know, is made up of its e-commerce business as well as its cloud business, Amazon Web Services. And what the pandemic created for Amazon was a situation where it had been flirting with a $1 trillion valuation. And by the end of last month, it had reached $1.7 trillion in valuation. That was unimaginable 2 years ago. The share price has flattened of late, and the events of the last few weeks have battered most shares, which is why I wanted to show you till the end of last month how this played out. But now contrast them with two of the more pure play cloud providers. Firstly, Microsoft. Microsoft has surpassed the $2 trillion valuation level. There's only one other company in the world with that kind of value, and that is Apple. So ironic that the two great rivals of the computer revolution are still the big rivals in terms of valuation. But thanks to the cloud revolution, Microsoft is still in that game. All its products are cloud-based, and its cloud hosting service has enabled it to enjoy the full benefits of this revolution. And then the big rival in the cloud business being Alphabet, the parent company of Google. The shape of that graph is very similar to the Microsoft one, but even more dramatic. Also closing in on a $2 billion valuation, not there yet, but before the pandemic, they weren't even close to $1 trillion in value. So we know that search makes up a big part of their revenues, but it's cloud that is really driving their value and their ability to perform in this environment. So those three slides show you the extent to which cloud has been adopted globally and has propelled these organizations to unimaginable values. A quick indication of how the cloud is being used. I'm not going to bore you with going through every one of these stats. You can do a search on a minute on the internet for any year, and you can see how significantly it's changed. But the one stat I'd really like to draw your attention to is the amount of emails that are sent every single minute. 197 million emails sent every single minute this year on the internet. And that tells you about communication, it tells you about business, and it tells you about connectedness. It is dramatic, it's not slowing down. So the demand for cloud is going to grow even further. And with that, I'd like to share with you some of the findings and insights from the Digital Corporation in South Africa 2021 study. that we conducted in the middle of this year. So this was a year on from the remote working study, and it gave us a really good indication of shifts that might have happened or might not have happened, as the case might be. So we asked companies how they describe their level of digital transformation, and only 22% said they were fully transformed, but more than half were either well underway or fully transformed. And that was slightly lower than it was at the beginning of the pandemic. And the reason for that is that many companies were simply trying to keep the lights on. They weren't focused on transforming their businesses. But bear in mind that figure of around half being almost fully digitally transformed. And then we look at investment in ICT and its change since the beginning of lockdown. And you can see almost the same proportion, close to half of all companies have increased their budgets over the previous year. So there's a strong correlation between being digitally transformed and spending more on ICT. The 8% who are spending less are the ones who can barely keep the lights on. So they are focused on basic infrastructure. And those are the companies that may well be out of business once we come out of this pandemic. We asked companies what form of connectivity they use. And it's interesting to see how fiber has become almost universal. But what's also interesting on this particular slide is when you look at number 4 and 5, fixed landlines and home Wi-Fi. The fixed landline represents the legacy form of communication and of connectivity, whereas home Wi-Fi, being invested in by the business, represents the hybrid workspace, because it means that companies might be fully equipped with fiber in the office, but they also need their staff to be connected adequately at home. And that's why home Wi-Fi suddenly crops up so highly and will overtake fixed landlines eventually. But that the fact that fixed landlines are still so high and that fiber is universal tells you that companies have invested in the new technologies by and large for connectivity, but haven't made that full switch. Often it's a mindset, often it's a case of not being digitally transformed in the business. There are various factors, but generally speaking, it represents companies having great difficulty letting go of the past, of their legacy infrastructure. Then we asked what were the most important factors in selecting technologies. People usually expect the answer to this question to show price as being number one. And it's interesting, over the 20 years that we've been conducting research in the digital enterprise environment, price has never come up as number one. It's always been around the third or the fourth position. Number one has always been quality. So when you're investing in technology and in infrastructure, you want to make sure it works. And that's the reason that quality beats price, except in government, of course. And we've seen the results of that with the numerous breaches of recent months. The second factor being maintenance or after-sales service. Always a key factor in investing in technology. You want to know that if something goes wrong, someone's going to fix that. And then price. So those three represent the golden triangle of product choices and of technology decision making. Quality, maintenance, and price. And then I'm not going to go all the way down this list. I'm going to focus on only the number one key area of ICT expenditure, and that is connectivity. And this correlates so strongly with the research we did a year ago, where we asked what were the most important factors in remote working. And connectivity had almost that same percentage, that 97, 98, 99% level of importance. So connectivity really underpins and drives all of these initiatives, all of these strategies, and all of these needs as well. And then remember that 38% mark previously? Well, we asked in the future, what proportion of staff do you expect to return to companies' offices? And 64% said all staff Now, the ones who didn't say all staff came to 36%, almost the exact same proportion as what we measured a year ago in terms of those who said they would allow staff to continue working from home. So it's almost as if the mindset for remote working and for hybrid working becomes set in stone once the decision has been made. But companies have to understand they have to be flexible, and we'll come back to that point in a moment as well. What this graph and the one from a year ago represents is a lack of flexibility in thinking about the future. So let's look at the specific area that is being covered in today's webinar, which is the PBX environment and the global PBX market. Look at the dramatic growth expected by Data Bridge from 2020 through to 2027. The light blue bar at the bottom of each of those bars represents the Middle East and Africa, and that represents our market. And it matches the growth that we are seeing across the world, which is an annual growth rate of 15% every single year. Now, that is massive. That represents over time a huge investment, but also huge commitment to this technology. And it means that the physical PABX is also going to go the way of the landline. But let's look at that in the broader context of unified communications. This was maximized market research looking at the growth of global unified communications from 2020 to 2027, covering that same period. The very last bar, conveniently, is still light blue, so you can look at the growth of that particular bar. You can look at comparisons between regions year by year, but that last bar represents our region, and South Africa, in terms of growth, matches that pace of growth. But what does this represent in terms of value and investment? The number is dramatic. The investment in unified communications globally will double from $16 billion last year to $32 billion by 2027. And South Africa will match that growth rand for rand, if not dollar for dollar. So this then brings us to a very clear set of conclusions on the myths versus the reality of the workplace of the future. And the single biggest myth that I would like to bust is the concept of the new norm. There is no new normal, and that is the actual norm, that the new normal is not a norm. It's all very contradictory, of course. But the second point really encapsulates why that is the case, and that is because the new workplace is hybrid. Not the workplace of the future, but the workplace of today is hybrid. The workplace of the future will remain hybrid. And because it's hybrid, it means that it will be different for every company, for every organization. There is no specific norm for any industry, for any country. It depends on a company's own needs, on its own strategy, and its own market positioning. But the one thing that is going to be standard is that it all has to be connected. You cannot survive, you cannot get to that recovery phase without being fully connected in all aspects of the business. And without using the cloud, whether it's private cloud, public cloud, hybrid cloud, you cannot survive in the digital future. The cloud is the underpinning, and connectivity is the glue of this connected future. The one truth is that the future will be variable for everybody, and you have to prepare for that variable future. Thank you very much.
Arthur, thank you very much. That was highly insightful. And wow, tell you, you know, it's clear to me that migration to the cloud, from the research that you've done, global research, that migration to the cloud is the key success factor for business continuity and growth into the future, right? And that there's no turning back from hybrid work, right? The hybrid work model is here to stay.
No question, Andrew.
Yeah, and that I think is where we're at today. you're saying that there's this mindset of organizations that kind of existed right at the beginning of the lockdown. It's a similar percentage of organizations that share the same mindset today, to embrace the new, right? And to allow that flexibility or be prepare themselves for the flexible, those variable futures or the variable future that you're talking about.
Exactly. It's about the mindset as well as the technology.
Yeah. And that's to me that's very interesting. That the other 64% of companies that haven't yet fully embraced hybrid are possibly at that inflection point now where they need to let go of the past, they need to let go of the old technologies, and they need to embrace the new. So this is very insightful, and I really appreciate
Thank you.
what you brought to our webinar today.
Thank you.
Well, and we'll continue to bring, because that's not the end of Arthur for today, folks. But yeah, folks, I mean, there isn't a customer that we're talking to at the moment that isn't have a significant number of their staff complement back to the office, or that aren't planning for a partial return to the office, right? And as performance measures mount, teaming and collaboration are absolutely critical to success, right? But hybrid work is more than just a location decision, right? It's about optimizing performance of the organization in every area of the organization, with every interaction, with with introducing or seeking out cost efficiency in every interaction, in every technology, in every engagement that we have within the company, and of course with our customers. So, you know, if you think about in the hybrid workspace, customers need to be able to contact you wherever you are, right? No matter where you are, and your employees need to have a quality, professional means of connecting with customers telephonically, because other research shows to us that 60% of the time, a phone call is the preferred means of interaction. That initial interaction, it's a phone call, right? So we've got to get telephony and cloud VoIP right. And what we're going to do right now, folks, is we're going to run 3 polls through the webinar. We really encourage you to participate, because we're really eager to hear where you are in your journey at this point in time. What challenges you might be facing, and obviously we'd love to see if we can assist overcome some of those challenges. So poll results will be reported in aggregate, and of course no personal information will be shared at all or disclosed at all. And if you take part in all 3 polls, we have you stand a chance to win 5 UC devices from Yealink. So please participate. You could walk away with a brand new UC device today. All right, so we're going to give you a few minutes to just answer that poll. And while we're doing that, Arthur, I saw in the news last week and a couple of weeks prior to that both FNB and Nedbank have selected the hybrid work model as a more enduring or more persistent approach to their work, with 40 and 60% of their workforce envisaged to be back at the office at any point in time, right? And so for me, this is a real indication, as you're saying, that it's a mindset, and that any organization really that has that mindset will and can embrace that hybrid work model to eke out those efficiencies and optimize performance in every. So, Arthur, do you think that this in-office to remote work ratio is going to be kind of what we see play out across most industries?
Definitely, Andrew, not just across most industries, but across most countries as well. What I found fascinating about these stats is how that 40% number keeps cropping up, or around the 40% mark of companies that are ready to continue working remotely, or that are ready for hybrid working, or the percentage of staff that will return to the office or not return to the office for that matter. So I think you're going to see that globally, and in every industry that's not manual intensive, that somewhere between the 40 and 60% mark of companies will become hybrid, and around 40 to 60% of staff will be working remotely or hybrid, because the remote worker isn't always a remote worker. And this is where flexibility comes in, the ability to be able to transition very quickly from the home office to the work office and back again. And not just because of lockdown, but because of the practicalities of that particular day's work. It all comes down to flexibility. So hybrid equals flexible.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And yeah, I think we've seen that pan out in terms of our engagements, our interactions with our customers. Um, not exactly sure those percentages right this second, and that will be interesting to see. Partly the reason for the poll. But yeah, I think there's still challenges to be overcome in some segments, and it's today's discussion is really to help our customers and those participants on the webinar to make informed choices about how to get it right first time, right? It's not about, you don't stumble across those technologies, you don't get it right per chance. You've got to, it's got to be an informed and deliberate decision to build out a hybrid workspace, right? So how are we looking with the polls, the results? Have we got any results? Okay. Okay. Okay, well, there's the number once again. So folks, it looks like, as Arthur said, South Africa is tracking global trends. We're pretty much matching rand for rand, dollar for dollar in terms of where we're spending to enable that hybrid work environment. And it's fantastic to see that from those that are joining us today, that you're experiencing the same sort of percentages as the rest of the world. So at this point in time, I'm going to hand over the floor to Natalie, and she's going to walk us through some of the Cloud PBX aspects of today's conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I think the reality is, and just feeding off of you, Arthur. It's so interesting to see exactly what we're seeing in our business as Vox. But what's very clear, the reality is that um, businesses have to consider this migration to a cloud. They really cannot afford to have legacy on-site infrastructure that's going to tie them back and not give them the functionality that they need and that their users need in order to survive in a hybrid model. And from a Vox perspective, we really see it as that there are two options that our customers have. It's either a very feature-rich PBX solution that has all of the team collaboration elements as part of that, a product like 3CX that Vox offers, or on the opposite side of that is just a rich collaboration application coupled with VoIP and VoIP technology, so something like Microsoft Teams. So we get asked the question all the time, which is the solution that our customers want to choose? And for us, we're here as your experts to help you decide what is the right fit for your business. But I think regardless of the choice or the options that you have and the two from the slide before, it's very clear that there are 4 points that either one of those options are going to bring you. It's firstly, obviously, the reduction in that hardware and that investment of infrastructure on site that they're trying to get away from. And secondly, it's to provide the resilience of cloud solutions and not being dependent on a location or a building or a specific premise that your staff typically was tied down to. And then, of course, a big element of hybrid models and being in a pandemic is obviously just tightening on those purse strings. So making sure you have a solution that gives you the best call rates possible for your business, regardless of whether your user is sitting at home, sitting at a coffee shop, or sitting in the business. And then, of course, allowing a business to keep their number. You've built a brand, you've built a reputation around a specific number, and you need to keep that as you evolve and as you move forward with a technology partner. And then just in terms of the poll stats, I mean, there's still 34% of you that took part in the poll are saying that you haven't started that migration and haven't started that journey to a hybrid model. And we really would like to help you at Vox to go through that journey with you and help you make the right decision. So which is the right option for you in terms of the two? Again, we get asked this all the time. Really stemming from your point earlier, Arthur, is it depends. It depends on your business and it depends on a number of things. So it depends on what your current application investments are and what your model is in terms of integration and your requirements in terms of integrations. And your users that you have in your business, what are their predominant features and functions that they need? So how do they need to communicate with their coworkers and how do they need to communicate with the outside world? And then just lastly, what is the organization's technology strategy? And that is a great part of that roadmap to choosing and selecting the right products. But the bottom line is there isn't a one size fits all, and there really is, or there are solutions to cater for all of those. Again, just part of your stats, Arthur, was about those building blocks of building this hybrid model and being intentional about that. And the cornerstone of those building blocks is connectivity, and it is fiber. That is the best technology that is available for us and provides you. We'll chat about this as we go along in the webinar, but we'll chat about how important that is for voice quality and giving that good experience for your users. Of course, second to that is voice, good quality voice, and then PBX, where all your applications are sitting, and preferably that's sitting in a cloud environment. And then overarching all of those and kind of circling all of that together is world-class support and secure platforms and secure technology. That really is, in what we're seeing in a lot of research we're doing, are the fundamentals of this hybrid model.
That's, just you touch on two very important points, and I think that was the difference between this intentional decision to enable your business hybrid in a hybrid fashion versus a year and a half ago, when organizations were just grabbing at technologies to keep the lights on, as Arthur was saying, right? The two fundamental aspects of those decisions that were missing was the support for this distributed workforce, of course, and then the security aspects. There were numerous reports of security breaches and some technology platform decisions and departures that happened over time. But yeah, I think that's what's really key about that intentional move.
100%. So I just want to carry on with the theme of busting some myths, because there are a lot of misconceptions out there around this hybrid model and around the technologies that are available. So first and foremost, in the UC or unified communication space, and how does that fit in within my world in PBXs? I mean, really going back 15 years ago, PBXs were designed for that interaction between users and the outside world. But as technology has evolved and as the user behavior has evolved, businesses are demanding for that typical grudge purchase of a PBX to work more for them. It's to bring a return on investment. And I guess out of that's where unified communications was really born. And the misconception or the myth there is the fact that businesses think that unified comms is not for everybody and it's not for every business, where the reality there is, if we think about it, and Arthur, in one of your slides, you showed your minute on the internet. I think it's about 69 million WhatsApp messages are sent every minute. The reality is, if your staff are not using a business tool to communicate, they're using some other non-business tools, and it's not being managed by the business, it's not centralized, and it's not being governed by the business, so there's no control. So that's a big element. Obviously, unified communications connects users. So whether you want to use it as a voice call, and that is obviously very important, that's our first point of departure. You also want to bring in things like chats, collaboration, desktop sharing, video calls, and all those kind of elements. So UC is important. And then the whole cloud migration strategy is top of mind for businesses, and moving into newer technology means embracing all of these unified comms elements. And again, just taking that myth away from businesses who think that it's not for them. Second to that is just got to be the misconception that unified comms is not going to save my business money. I could talk all day about saving money. Andrew, I know you're also going to talk about saving money, but the reality is that going with a cloud-based platform allows you to worry about today's business and not have to plan for 5 years from now and fork out that kind of expense. You can worry about today and let your technology partner worry about the scalability and the flexibility of the platform, and allowing your technology partner to manage that platform and not let you worry about expensive resources to manage that for you. And obviously getting away from those expensive on-site solutions. And we look at staff productivity being increased by using unified comms tools. It is a no-brainer. And then businesses using the right tools also see a massive reduction in things like travel, and being able to conduct more meetings in a day by using teleconferencing or video conferencing type of applications. And then 74% of employees are using mobile apps for VoIP calls. This in itself is a massive saving for businesses because we get away from those expensive GSM calls and we're now using corporate rates that are typically much lower than the GSM rates. So all in all, a definite cost saving for businesses all round. Just quickly, another poll that I think is quite relevant at this stage is how many companies represented here today are still making use of on-prem PBX products. So I'll let everybody just quickly answer that while we talk to that. And while everybody's answering that, I think it's quite important for the audience to know where's Vox's stance within the cloud versus on-prem situation. And if I look over the last couple, and it probably would be very interesting to look over the last 10 years, but specifically in the last 2 years, we've seen quite a significant growth and demand for cloud-based solutions. In the last year, we've seen a mere 5 to 10% of customers still requiring on-prem solutions versus the 95% of our customers demanding and requiring cloud-based solutions. So if we're looking at global trends and we're looking at the trends of South Africa, Vox is certainly following that trend, and we have products and solutions to deliver on those requirements. Okay, so I don't know if the poll results are available. Give it a sec.
Any
There's going to be any guesses on this?
I'd
very
say
interesting.
35%.
35, 36.
There we go.
33.
Okay.
Okay.
Close.
Okay, so 67% say no, and 33% are saying
That they still have an on-prem.
they still have on-prem solutions.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, I mean, those numbers, it's like
Exactly in line with
Fibonacci numbers.
expectations, yeah.
Yeah, it's very fascinating to see. So, yeah, folks, so there's definitely an opportunity for those of you that are still reliant on on-prem technology to make that switch to the more scalable, more flexible, more cost-effective cloud-based technologies and VoIP and Cloud PBX. So we'd love to have a conversation with you around how we can help you make that decision on what technology platform is the right fit for your organization, and how you can then make that move with confidence, with de-risking that decision, making sure you've got the support that's required for that platform, and making sure that you are enjoying those cost savings or that optimization that's promised with this hybrid work environment. All right, so from my side, I'd like to just now, we're debunking myths today. That's the theme of our conversation, and VoIP has been around for the past 25 years, right? And it's matured significantly since inception, but there are still some persistent myths that require debunking, right? And the truth is, VoIP is one of the easiest, most cost-effective, and most reliable ways for businesses to communicate both internally and with their customers. So the first myth that VoIP isn't secure is certainly not the case, right? IP telephony is no less secure than old fixed line PTSN type technology. In fact, owing to encryption, with VoIP you can manage and mitigate the risks of any kind of breach in security far more effectively than you could on the old fixed line technology. And a world-class VoIP service provider will provide you with 24/7, 365 day advanced monitoring and fraud detection. So I think the fact that the myth on the security aspect of VoIP has been clearly busted, right? Then there have been, this second myth where VoIP quality might have been poor in the past is certainly maybe limited to the past, where connectivity options were limited and the link speeds were insufficient to carry reliable voice service. But the truth is that a VoIP call only requires 80 to 100 kilobits of data at any point in time. And if you ever look at your smallest business link, it's probably 10 megabits per second. You've got a 1,000-fold headroom in terms of the ability for that connection, which you can now maximize your investment in to benefit from VoIP. You've got ample headroom. So the quality aspects of VoIP are quite apparent. And of course, headsets and handsets in a digital space are far more advanced than the old analog. And you're going to need these noise cancelling type technologies when you get back to the office. When you work in that hybrid environment, back at the office, open plan, you got different distractions to what you had working from home, right? So you've got to make sure that the same call quality, the same experience quality that you're having at home in a more controlled environment, possibly, is the equal kind of experience that you have back at the office. And Arthur, just a quick question for you. What's your experience on the VoIP or UC devices? Have you had the opportunity to try these out? Have you got any insights for us on those devices?
Yes, in fact, one of the big changes that we made in our business was that we dropped our landline for a mobile device that we position as our landline. People think it's our landline, but it's actually a mobile phone that we can take anywhere we want to. We connect it via Wi-Fi to fiber. So the cost of usage has plummeted to near zero, for example. And then in terms of additional equipment to ensure quality of voice and the like, in most cases, our workplace is set up in such a way that we have good sound quality, but where quality is compromised, we will use headsets and earphones. In fact, I had a look at the Yealink device, and it's incredibly professional looking. I speak to a lot of people who speak for a living at events and the like. And the biggest differentiator between the more successful ones and the less successful ones is the quality of what they put across in terms of video as well as audio. And this particular device looks professional. Often people who speak with headphones and speaking to a microphone look like DJs. But this way you actually look like a professional at work.
I think can't understate the importance of having the right equipment for the job. So, folks, I just want to move through the rest of these myths quite quickly because I hear that we're running out of time. So the reliability factor around VoIP in the past, I think, is certainly no longer the truth. I mean, most cloud VoIP providers are offering 5.9 uptime. Just quickly put that into context. 5.9 uptime in a typical year means 52 seconds downtime in a year, right? That's 1 second a week. Okay, so I think reliability has kind of been the myth that it's not reliable is busted completely in terms of what we. But one thing I do want to quickly discuss is the quality of your VoIP network is vital, right? If your provider's network isn't of a high quality, you are going to struggle with VoIP technology. There's no question about that, right? So look out for that in terms of the network quality of your VoIP provider. It should be latency optimized, and of course, there should be conservative capacity planning to ensure no lag and no breakage in that communication medium. Right, then VoIP being expensive. I think what we've seen is that there's almost a universal. I mean, the numbers keep ringing true here. Somewhere between 30 and 50% saving when we switch over from legacy landline to VoIP telephony in terms of the cost savings enjoyed by companies making that migration, and of course. Those savings exclude the added expense of picking up GSM bills for employees working at home. So just some numbers to really consider there. And then if you are still attached to your old telephony device, then you can retrofit those devices, of course, to be connected to a VoIP network. And even better, of course, is to ditch the device completely in terms of that hybrid work model, running a desktop or a mobile app, so that you don't have to worry about the maintenance around that actual physical hardware as well. All right, and then the last myth, which is just something that we commonly experience on a day-to-day basis, is that your number needs to change if you're going to migrate to a VoIP solution. Okay, nobody can hold your number hostage, your geographic number hostage. So you can migrate with absolute confidence, port your number over to the VoIP network, to the Vox VoIP network, and enjoy all the benefits of the flexible, more scalable VoIP environment. All right, so we're going to quickly jump into our last poll. The question that we have for you now is how many companies represented today still make analog calls over legacy fixed line infrastructure? And we'll give you 30 seconds to answer that, since we're running out of time. Um, so, Arthur, I think one of the stats that you had was quite interesting for me was that 84% of respondents in your study earlier this year are still using fixed landline technology. I mean, what insights did you uncover in this aspect of the study? Was there anything that stood out for you?
It was pretty much the idea that home Wi-Fi is now becoming as important a part of the mix as the landline. And when you consider, and there you have it, 90% say yes. So that tallies pretty close with our research that said, I think 84% are still using landlines. But what those two numbers represent, along with the fiber figure of it being almost unanimous, is that companies are still wrestling with balancing the past and the future. Yeah. They are moving into the future, but still pretty much tied to the umbilical cord of the past.
Very interesting. And yeah, global stats, local stats, they all seem to be lining up quite neatly. All right. So
yeah. So I mean, what does it look like for companies to get this right? Again, based on a couple of studies that we looked at, I'll just skim through this quite quickly. The underlying message in the slide really is just that customers are looking for something that's simple, something that's scalable, something that provides a uniform experience across multiple devices, across different users within a business, and they want it to be secure. And also importantly, part of that is they want to have one service provider for that. They want to be able to get all of their products and all of their services and applications. They want to get away basically from these disparate platforms and disparate architecture. So that really is the message in this slide. And how do you choose that right partner? I think the key message here is these are maybe the four main questions that you should be asking your technology partner before you make this decision. These are the things that you need to make sure you've ticked off on that list. Is that technology partner certified and has all the necessary certifications to provide that service to you? Are they resources skilled, and are they across the country? That's also quite important. When we start dealing with these disparate locations, that becomes important. Are those platforms owned and managed by them as opposed to third-party vendors? And are you able to choose products that suit your business with a multi-vendor approach as opposed to being forced one particular product? And then having a partner or a technology partner that provides you a comprehensive and complementary range of products to suit all of the elements, from the connectivity to the voice to the technology and all of those elements. You want to be able to get that from that one partner.
Thanks, Natalie. So, yeah, I think just to wrap up, so the key takeaways, folks, is that in order to capitalize on the cost savings and business performance optimization that the hybrid workplace design really enables, is that you need to be deliberate in your selection of your communication partner, right? You need one partner that can deliver and support your connectivity, your Cloud PBX solution, and of course provide you with tailored voice solutions to meet your specific requirements. So you can by embracing hybrid, by making that move, by migrating away, cutting that umbilical cord from the past. The key here is maximize your investment in your fiber connection, right? To carry both your data and your voice traffic with ease, right? You need to migrate to a Cloud PBX platform such as 3CX or Teams Voice, and you need to ensure that you're addressing cost in every corner of the organization, right? And that is really the exciting aspect of what hybrid offers. If you choose the correct underpinning technologies, you will realize those optimizations and the savings. So, folks, thank you very much for your time. We would love to assist those of you who are still embarking on or not quite fully got that momentum yet in your journey. So please reach out to us via your account managers, and we'd love to engage with you in the next couple of days. All right, so folks, we've run out of time. It was great to spend time with Natalie and Arthur. So unfortunately, we run out of time. Please, your questions have been submitted. We do have them, but we unfortunately can't answer them right now. We will answer all your questions via email in the next day or so. All right. So thank you again for your time. It's been a privilege spending this spring day with you, with Natalie and Arthur. Thank you very
Andrew.
much for your time.
Thanks, Natalie.
Thanks.
And have a great week, folks. Enjoy the long weekend.
Cheers.